Fellow Sadzaitas, in my last video, we went deep into the inner workings of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces as we took a look at its structure and function. We did this to explore the possibility of low-ranking military commanders staging a coup against President Emmerson Mnangagwa. We concluded that if a coup is to happen in Zimbabwe, it's most likely to be led by senior commanders, not junior commanders. And we gave reasons. So, we won't get into that because today, we want to briefly look at the Central Intelligence Organization, commonly known as the CIO. What really is the CIO? What function does it perform? And who runs it? Is it a formal organization or just a shadowy paramilitary organization? How is it different from military and police intelligence? And what about the CID? Is it also part of the CIO? Well, fellow Sadzaitas, slay queens and bingers, socialites, papalites, vasnamalites, varkudgarais, nevarkurumanelais. Welcome to the special report. The Central Intelligence Organization, commonly known as CIO, is Zimbabwe's primary intelligence agency. Its lawful function is to collect and analyze information inside and outside Zimbabwe in order to prevent or stop dangers like terrorism, plots to overthrow the government, insurgency activities, spy activities, and so on. The CIO does all this while providing protection for high-ranking officials. So that means the people who make important decisions in Zimbabwe are given CIO protection. That is the lawful function of the CIO. But, as you already know, or will soon know, it is difficult to always put the word lawful and CIO in the same sentence. The Zimbabwe National Army has an intelligence division, commonly known as MI, short for military intelligence. It is not part of the CIO. Similarly, the Zimbabwe Republic Police has a specialized branch which focuses on security and intelligence. This too is not part of the CIO. The Criminal Investigation Department of the ZRP, commonly known as CID, is also not part of the CIO. The CIO is one of the 5 security services of Zimbabwe, namely the Zimbabwe National Army, the Air Force of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Republic Police, the Zimbabwe Prison Services, and of course, the Central Intelligence Organization itself, commonly known as CIO. The commander of the ZRP has the rank and title of Commissioner General. The commander of the Zimbabwe Prison Services also has the rank and title of Commissioner General. The commander of the Air Force of Zimbabwe has the rank and title of Air Marshal. The commander of the Zimbabwe National Army is a Lieutenant General. And the commander of the CIO has the rank and title of Director General. And by the way, the Americans pronounce this word as lieutenant, but the British pronounce it as lieutenant. You see, the English language has various flavors when it comes to pronunciation, grammar, and spelling. There is the British flavor, the American flavor, the Australian flavor, and so on and so forth. I'm only saying this because in my last video, there are some in the comment section who were literally attacking me, would you believe? Attacking me for pronouncing this word as lieutenant. Well, I sympathize with their ignorance. Anyway, back to the topic. We said that the commander of the CIO goes by the title of Director General, but he's not a commander in the military sense because CIO operatives are not soldiers. Anyway, the current Director General of the CIO is Fulton Mangwanya, the former Zimpac's boss. He reports directly to the president. You see, the CIO is structurally and operationally tied to the office of the president. In fact, institutionally, the Central Intelligence Organization is actually a department in the Office of the President, meaning CIO officers actually work in the Office of the President. Yes, the Office of the President is not the room in which he works in. The Office of the President refers to the collective functions, the staff and authority of the presidency. It's the administrative and operational entity supporting the President's duties, including his advisors, aides, and departments. That is why the CIO is a department in the Office of the President. However, it is not the President who runs the CIO. It is actually the Minister of State Security who runs the CIO on behalf of the President. So even though the Director General reports directly to the President, he works under the supervision of the Minister of State Security and gets policy direction from the said minister. Meaning, the Minister of State Security is the actual CIO boss. The current Minister of State Security is Love Momatuke. He is the 7th man to lead this ministry since 1980. The first person to become Minister of State Security was Idi Mnangagwa from 1980 to 1988. The second person was Sidney Sekeramai from 1988 up to the year 2000. The third person was Nicholas Goche from the year 2000 to 2005. The fourth person was Didmas Mutasa from 2005 to 2009. Sidney Sekeramai had a second spell as State Security Minister from 2009 to 2013. This was during the inclusive government. After the 2013 election, the Minister of State Security was temporarily suspended and later brought back in 2015. Kembo Mohadi became the 5th person to lead this ministry from 2015 until the 2017 coup. After the coup, the State Security Ministry was merged with the Ministry of Defense. In 2018, ED brought back the Ministry of State Security, and Owen Mudangwe became the 6th person to lead this ministry. He was however fired in 2022 for inappropriate conduct. No further information was provided regarding this inappropriate conduct. But Owen Mudangwe's tenure as State Security Minister was just like that of Idi Mnangagwa. Very controversial and scandal-ridden. Now, there is no clear constitutional or parliamentary framework governing the role of the CIO. It simply operates in secrecy, and even its funding is opaque. And as I already said, the CIO functions as a department in the Office of the President. This is done to ensure direct executive control and to create an environment that is conducive for loyalty and secrecy in addressing security and political matters. This practice started way before independence and continued under Robert Mugabe as he sought to consolidate power. This is still the case under President ED. You see, the CIO has been in existence since 1963. It was established by Ian Smith's predecessor, Winston Field. This is the man who led the Rhodesian Front to its first electoral victory in 1962. And for those of you who might not know, the Rhodesian Front was pretty much the ZANU PF of Rhodesia from 1962 to 1979 in terms of political monopoly. It is the party which was in charge of Rhodesia throughout the liberation struggle. For close to 20 years, the Rhodesian Front resisted black majority rule. It arrested opposition leaders, banned political rallies, abducted activists, killed political opponents, tortured prisoners, denied opposition leaders bail, and even songs that were deemed political were denied airplay. Now, doesn't all of that stuff sound familiar? Are we not seeing most, if not all, of this stuff happening today? Now, that tells you that some of our problems were carried over from Rhodesia. You know, the killing, the abductions, the use of the law to silence critics, the denial of bail, the banning of songs that are deemed political. All of this stuff started in Rhodesia. It was done to resist majority rule. And the CIO was very key in that resistance. It was led by this man, Ken Flower. Through his leadership, the CIO initiated and funded the creation of RENAMO. Now, if you know Mozambican politics very well, you will know that there is a party called RENAMO. Well, RENAMO started as a militant rebel group. It was formed in the 70s by the Rhodesian CIO. And the reason? To overthrow Samora Machel's government as punishment for helping ZANU forces. The Rhodesian CIO worked very closely with the infamous Selous Scouts in operations where spies were sent into ZIPRA and ZANU camps, masquerading as new guerrilla recruits with the aim of infiltration. You see, the role of the CIO was to identify, monitor and target African nationalists and anyone perceived to be a threat. This did not change after independence. The CIO under Robert Mugabe retained and maintained its modus operandi. Even Ken Flower, the founding Director General of the CIO, remained in charge until 1981, including many white Rhodesian operatives. So apart from gathering information in order to detect local and foreign threats, thereby keeping Zimbabwe safe, you can tell that the role of the CIO has always been political, with a bias in favor of either the Rhodesian Front before independence or ZANU PF after independence. Before 1980, the CIO was fixated on helping the Rhodesian military defeat the armies of ZIPRA and ZANU. After independence, the CIO has also been fixated on defending and protecting the ZANU PF regime. But of course, let's be fair and objective. The CIO has contributed to Zimbabwe's relative peace and stability, particularly in preventing insurgencies. Yes, we have political problems, which the CIO has been a part of, but it would be criminal for me not to acknowledge the contribution of the CIO to the stability of Zimbabwe as a nation state, insofar as terrorism and insurgencies are concerned. The problem is, as a nation, we haven't agreed on what constitutes national security and national interest. Because clearly, ZANU PF has its own definition of national interest and national security, and the opposition also has its own definition. There is a disconnect. That's why anyone who criticizes ZANU PF is deemed to be acting against national interest and condemned as a sellout, a traitor, a snitch. And you know what they say about snitches, don't you? They say snitches get stitches. My question remains, what constitutes national interest? This question has always been relevant even before independence. The ANC, NDP, ZAPU and even ZANU were all banned in the late 50s and early 60s because they were deemed to be acting against national interest. Yet all they demanded for was majority rule. Sadly, ZANU PF uses the same tactics. Laws like the Patriot Act have been enacted with the goal of punishing those who are a danger to national security and those whose activities are against national interest. Now, in theory, this is actually a good law. The only problem is, national interest includes ZANU PF interests. You see, in Zimbabwe, the government and the ruling party are one and the same thing. Yet, there should be a clear distinction. This lack of a distinction is what makes this issue of national interest very dangerous for opposition parties in Zimbabwe. Because anyone who is a threat to ZANU PF is automatically deemed a threat to Zimbabwe. Because as far as they are concerned, the interests of ZANU PF are also the interests of Zimbabwe, which is what they then call national interest. And by the way, the current Minister of State Security, Lovemo Matuke, is also the boss of the Security Department of ZANU PF. It doesn't take a genius to see the implications of this. Remember the words of Edi Mnangagwa himself. He said, "We are the army, we are the police, We are the CIO. Yet, what the law says is actually quite the contrary. Remember, the modern CIO is actually established by Section 224 of the Zimbabwean Constitution, the 2013 Constitution. Subsection 2 of that section says that the CIO must be non-partisan. But we all know that the CIO is very far, extremely far from being non-partisan. In fact, all security services in Zimbabwe are partisan. Many senior military generals in Zimbabwe have openly supported ZANU PF. Yet the Constitution in Section 211 clearly says that the ZDF should be non-partisan. That's why I always say that the problem in Zimbabwe is not the law. The problem is compliance with the law. Reforms are not the answer. What's the point of bringing in new laws when the existing ones are not being followed? I just showed you. You see, according to the Constitution, General Sanyatwe broke the law when he said that ZANU PF ichatonga kusvika madhonge amera nyanga. But guess what? Nothing happened to him. We all just moved on like nothing had happened. Why? Because we are all used to it. Once again, the problem is not the law. The problem is compliance with the law. And by the way, Section 61, subsection 4 of the Zimbabwean Constitution says that the ZBC must be impartial and provide a fair opportunity for different views and opinions. Is this what actually happens? Is the ZBC not a mouthpiece of ZANU PF? A public relations department of ZANU PF in clear violation of the law, which says that the ZBC must be impartial. So don't doubt me when I tell you that the problem is not the law. The problem is compliance. The Constitution is simply not being enforced because the people who are meant to enforce it don't follow it themselves. They only enforce it when dealing with the opposition and silencing anyone who they think is a threat. To members of the Secret Service, if you're watching this video, I assure you, I am not a threat. But thank you for watching anyway. And if you enjoyed the content, please like and share.
Totanga ndaferefeta ndozozvinyora pa